Welcome to A Year in the Bible with Daily Grace. From Eden to eternity, the Bible tells one big story of redemption. My name is Tiffany, and I want to spend a few minutes with you every day walking through the Bible chronologically. Together, we will explore God's sovereign plan as the events of Scripture unfold and point to Jesus. Hey friends, Tiffany here. I'm so glad you are joining me on our chronological journey through the Bible. Today, we come to Joshua chapters 16 through 18, which in essence is part 2 from our chapters yesterday. The book of Joshua has moved from one of conquest to one of settlement, and Joshua is now allotting the land to the 12 tribes of Israel. Yesterday, we read about the 2.5 tribes that settled to the east of the Jordan River, Caleb's land allotment in Hebron, and the land given to the tribe of Judah. Today, the allotments continue, and I want to remind you that it is definitely helpful to have a map handy while reading these chapters. Some of these places will be mentioned again as we work our way through the Bible. As we dive into chapter 16, we move on from Judah's land and cities to Joseph's inheritance. Take a moment to think back to Genesis 48, when Jacob had Joseph bring his 2 sons to receive a blessing. In this, Joseph received a double blessing as his 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, each became a tribe of Israel. The blessing Jacob gave these sons now finds its fulfillment as Joshua tells them their land boundaries. These lands include important cities such as Shiloh, Shechem, and Gilgal. And we also want to take note that Ephraim, though second-born, received the greater blessing from Jacob and will continue to grow in prominence among the nation. Sadly, that prominence will not be for God's glory or the good of the nation. Tucked into the middle of this chapter, we also see the fulfilled promise to the daughters of Zelophehad. Back in Numbers chapters 27 and 36, we read about the plight of these sisters who had no brothers to claim a land inheritance. The Lord made a provision for them, and once again, God keeps his promise and provides for these women and their future families as they receive land among their tribe of Manasseh. We also don't want to miss a foreshadowing of issues that will plague Israel in the future. 2 times we read how these tribes failed to drive out all the Canaanites from their lands. Though the Canaanites would be forced laborers for these tribes, their presence, and specifically their worship of false gods, would influence the Israelites and lead them to turn their back on God. These tribes also give us a glimpse of their entitled attitudes. Even after receiving their allotment, they complain to Joshua that they need more land for their large tribes. And they share their concerns over the Canaanites that still inhabit the land. I love Joshua's response, and I imagine him saying it with a great effect as he tells them that if they are so vast in number and God has repeatedly promised victory, then they should be able to conquer the far reaches of their land and inhabit it. They must also work hard to clear the land and use it for crops. Interestingly enough, as archaeologists have excavated these lands, it has been discovered that during this time period, new forms of farming were invented, such as terracing mountain terrains for crops, and the use of cisterns and rock-lined silos were also developed. God equipped his people not only to possess the land, but to also prosper while living there. Something Joshua reminded them of in his response to trust God and move forward with initiative. As we come to the first 10 verses of chapter 18, we read that the tabernacle was set up in the city of Shiloh. It was there that Joshua called the rest of the tribes together and compelled them to go and take possession of their land. 3 men from each of the 7 remaining tribes were sent to scout out their land and return to Joshua with a report. Joshua then cast lots to distribute the land. In this era, casting lots was a God-ordained way to determine his will in a matter. Casting lots was done at the direction of the Lord and always in accordance with his word. Benjamin was the next tribe to receive their land. Though small, their land allotment was strategically placed between the tribe of Judah and the two tribes of Joseph. One of the most notable cities in Benjamin's land was Bethel, the same place where Jacob had his vision of the stairway to heaven. Bethel will remain an important location as we work our way through the Old Testament. We also want to note the mention of Jerusalem. Now, if you remember our reading yesterday, Jerusalem was mentioned in Judah's allotment as well. So it begs us to ask the question, which one was it? Did Joshua get confused? And some have even wondered if this means the Bible contradicts itself. Of course, the answer to these questions is no. Jerusalem actually lay on the line between these two tribes. And as we read yesterday, the Jebusites continued to occupy Jerusalem for quite some time. In other words, the Israelites had yet to possess it, so whether it was allotted to Judah or Benjamin wasn't really an issue while they still awaited God's victory over the Jebusites. Once that victory comes, under King David's rule, Jerusalem would be absorbed by the tribe of Judah and become the capital of the nation, and more importantly, where God's presence would dwell once the temple was built. We can often wonder why these chapters in Scripture matter, but we can trust they matter because God placed them here for us to read thousands of years later. These records are a declaration of God's faithfulness. They are foundational to the nation of Israel, who God appointed as his chosen nation. Not because of anything they did, but because in his grace and mercy, he chose to bring the Messiah through them. And through this chosen nation, we see that God is a promise keeper, as even here in Joshua, we see partial fulfillment of the promises made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Isaiah chapter 46, verses 9 through 10, remind us of the importance of these seemingly mundane chapters as our hearts remember God is in every detail of his plan of redemption. These verses say, "Remember what happened long ago, for I am God, and there is no other. I am God, and no one is like me. I declare the end from the beginning, and from long ago what is not yet done, saying, my plan will take place, and I will do all my will." We remember and we study because each and every verse points our hearts to God. We remember because it brings us to our knees in worship for all that God has done to bring us back into a right relationship with him. Thanks for joining me today. Tomorrow we will study Joshua chapters 19 through 21 as we near the end of this event-filled book. Don't forget that you can follow along on our Instagram pages at Daily Grace Podcast and at The Daily Grace Co. And you can check out our website, thedailygraceco.com, for all kinds of resources to help you dig deeper. I will see you tomorrow, friends. Bye.